Hi there, I'm Judah Vitale, functional nutritionist, lifestyle coach, and HeartMath mentor. And this is the fourth in a series of videos that I'm doing on gut healing for you. In the last video, I went through the different areas of the digestive tract and the dysfunctions that can arise in the digestive process and how to address them nutritionally. Now, in this video, what I want to do is walk you through the microbiome and the importance of the microbiome, gut-brain axis, and basically leaky gut and autoimmunity. So this is going to be a fairly technical and yet interesting video. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I love this subject. You know, the reason why I spend so much time on gut with as a nutritionist, as a functional nutritionist, is because gut is the foundation of all health. The GI tract is connected to every major system in the body. And if there's any dysfunctions happening in the digestive tract, that's going to radiate out and affect the rest of your physiology. So it's really important to make sure that digestion is always strong, and to make sure that there is that there's no dysfunctions arising in the digestive tract. So 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut, so we want to make sure that our immune system is strong in the gut. Our gut actually produces up to 98 or 90% of all of our neurotransmitters. All of our, basically what I like to call molecules of the soul, all the chemicals that are responsible for how we think and feel. 99% of our serotonin, which is involved with feelings of positive self-image, pain threshold, optimal mood, 99% of that is produced in the gut. Our dopamine, which is our pleasure neurotransmitter, produced in the gut. GABA, our inhibitory anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, most of it is produced in the gut. And acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter that's involved with the efficiency with which the brain and the nervous system functions, is produced in the gut, right? So we want to make sure that we have a healthy gut. And one of the key components of having a healthy gut with neurotransmitter production is healthy microbiome, healthy bacterial colonies, because the reality is that we're technically born 99% human, but we die 90% microbial. I just think that's so fascinating. By the time we die, we will have up to 9 million different bacterial DNA in and on us. We only have 23,000 human genes, but by the time we die, we'll have up to 9 million microbial genes in and on us. And that's our microbiome. Our microbiome is our collection inside of us and on our skin of microbes. And the microbiome is probably involved with almost all, if not all, biological processes that constitute human health in general. Okay, so the microbiome is involved with every biological process that constitutes human health. And we have about 10 trillion human cells, and we have upwards of greater than 100 trillion microbial cells. So we're significantly more microbial than we are human in the cellular and genetic realm. Now, the microbiome has a wide variety of functions. The microbiome is involved with digestion and metabolism, so it helps with energy and nutrient extraction from our food. As I mentioned in the last video, probiotics are a fantastic way to help improve your digestion. Probiotics can help with mitigating the effects or basically regulating gut motility. So if there's diarrhea, probiotics can basically start helping to get rid of the diarrhea and bring form to loose stools. If there's constipation, probiotics can help with eliminating the constipation and improving bowel movement frequency. So probiotics serve a role in digestion that way, or improving gut health that way. They also help with extracting the nutrients from our food. So when the fiber, the leftover fiber from the food that we're digesting, which I had talked about in the second video in this series, gets into the colon, bacteria, healthy bacteria, will ferment those fibers and produce nutrients like short-chain fatty acids, which are energy for the colon. That helps reduce the risk of colon cancer, and also extract nutrients like B12 as well as vitamin K. So energy and nutrient extraction protect us against infections. The microbiome, a healthy microbiome, good bacteria will crowd out pathogenic or dysbiotic bacteria, helping improve the ecosystem. And ecosystem is a crucial word here. Technically, we're really just a walking ecosystem in the grand scheme of things, and how healthy and imbalanced our ecosystem is determines how healthy and balanced we are. And this really begins at the microbial level. Bacteria help maintain the integrity of the gut lining, which is the barrier between the outer world of the intestines and the inner sanctum of the blood. And this is really important, as I'll talk about in a little bit with leaky gut and autoimmunity. The microbiome helps modulate the immune system. So immune modulation is where if you have a hypersensitive, hyperstimulated immune system, a healthy microbiome or probiotics can help tone that immune system down, kind of dial it down a little bit so it's not so hyperstimulated. If your immune function is compromised and low, it can help raise it up. So it modulates the immune system, doing what the immune system needs. The microbiome is also responsible for producing anti-inflammatory compounds, pain-relieving factors, different antioxidants, as well as vitamins, as I had mentioned, vitamin K and vitamin B12. And it helps basically influence mood and behavior via neurotransmitter production. So a healthy microbiome can produce healthy amounts of our neurotransmitters that affect the way we think and feel, as I just mentioned a moment earlier. So many times what we can see is people who have depression, it may not actually be a psychological depression. It can actually be that they have gut dysbiosis, and that dysbiosis isn't allowing for the healthy production of neurotransmitters like serotonin or dopamine, and therefore they end up feeling depressed, or they lose their sense of joy. Maybe they start to have anxiety because they're not producing GABA properly. So a lot of psychological disorders can actually be stemmed from gut issues. And that's the gut-brain axis. There is bidirectional communication that occurs between the gut and the brain via the longest nerve in the body, the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs out of the brainstem, and it innervates all of our lungs, our heart, our kidneys, our gut, and it's primarily an afferent nerve, meaning that it is responsible for sending information from organs to the brain. And as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, the gut sends 9 times the amount of information to the brain than the brain sends to the gut. Okay, so the brain is more highly informed by the gut than the gut is the brain. And there's bidirectional communicating occurring here. And so when there is gut dysfunction, say you're eating foods that you're allergic to, that you have an immune response to, that immune response is going to cause inflammation. You're going to get inflammation in your gut. When you begin to have gut inflammation, that is going to send a signal from the vagus nerve to the brain that there's inflammation. And that's going to trigger inflammation in the brain. And when you have inflammation in the brain, what we call neuroinflammation, that's going to send an inflammatory response back down the vagus nerve to the gut. So you get this self-perpetuating cycle of inflammation from gut to brain, then brain to gut. And as that goes on for a prolonged period of time, what begins to happen is that you then start to get neurodegeneration, because you stimulate or you activate cells in the brain called microglial cells. And these begin to send off big inflammatory bursts that will start to wipe out neurons, and you start to get neurodegeneration. And as you get neurodegeneration, that sends signals down the vagus nerve to the gut that cause degeneration in the gut as well. And where this is first going to start to show up is in the lining of the gut. And as if there's any kind of inflammation, food sensitivities, dysbiosis, which dysbiosis is a term we use that basically says that there is a flip-flop in the ratio of bad to good bacteria in the gut, meaning that you have an ecosystem that isn't healthy. It's more of an unhealthy microbial ecosystem than a healthy microbial ecosystem. And that's going to, one of the things that bacteria do is they secrete substances that promote the ecosystem that's advantageous for them. So if you have an unhealthy microbial ecosystem, they're going to secrete substances. Basically, we could call them metabolites, is what they're technically called. So they start to secrete metabolites that create an environment that's conducive to them. And if they're pathogenic, unhealthy, that starts to affect your gut. And one of the things that can begin to happen is the lining of the gut can begin to deteriorate. And as the lining of the gut begins to deteriorate, you start to get these little tears, these little holes in the gut lining that causes it to become permeable. So you can look at this like, if you're camping and you have a tent and you have a really good rain fly and you have it prevents the water from getting in, well, that would be a healthy intestinal lining. But if there's any kind of breach in that rain fly that allows rain to get in, you're going to get wet, right? Or if you leave the windows open at night, rain can get in, or anything can get in, right? Well, if you have intestinal permeability, then what happens is undigested protein particles, fragments of bacteria, viruses, parasites, can all cross through the lining of the intestines and get into the bloodstream. And when they get into the bloodstream, your immune system, the white blood cells in the blood, part of your immune system, are going to identify them as foreign invaders and begin to attack them. And every time the immune system is stimulated or triggered, it is followed by an inflammatory response. So if you have intestinal permeability, affectionately known as leaky gut, and you're eating meals multiple times a day that actually create inflammation, feed dysbiosis, like sugars, refined starches, alcohol, caffeine, artificial sweeteners, these types of things that create, that basically feed the pathogenic bacteria, the dysbiotic bacteria, and it increases the likelihood of leaky gut. As those foods cross the lining of the intestines and get into the bloodstream and keep stimulating your immune system meal after meal, day after day, and every time that happens there's an inflammation or an inflammatory response afterwards, what happens is your immune system becomes hypersensitized. And there might be compounds in those foods, like say in gluten, that resemble your own tissue, like your thyroid gland. And then your immune system begins to identify the tissue of your thyroid gland as a foreign invader, and it begins to attack it. And that's called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the most common form of hypothyroidism in the United States and Western world today. So this is how autoimmune diseases come on the scene, is from a dysbiotic environment, an unhealthy gut environment, increase of pathogenic load, the consumption of foods that you might have sensitivities to, like gluten, dairy, different grains, gluten-containing grains like rye, barley, spelt, triticale, kamut, oats, and then you get this breach in the intestinal lining, you get this leaky gut, undigested protein particles, bacteria fragments called lipopolysaccharides, viruses, parasites, all can cross that lining now, that breach, get into the blood, get into the inner sanctum of the blood. Your immune system gets triggered, and over a course of time, over a period of time of this happening, day in and day out, immune system becomes hypersensitized, begins to identify your own tissue as part of the foreign invader. Like there's this direct connection between gluten and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So then the immune system begins to attack your own tissue, and you end up with an autoimmune condition. So this is how leaky gut leads to autoimmunity. A lot of the doctors that I talk with believe that autoimmunity is 100% related to leaky gut, which I see that more and more all the time. The prevalence of leaky gut right now is phenomenal, and it's one of the first things I do with any patient working with autoimmunity is begin to heal the gut. It's one of the most important things we can do is, one, start to work on the immune system, because as an example, something like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it's not a thyroid condition, it's actually an immune system condition. So we work directly with the immune system, not the thyroid. We work to tone the immune system down, and then we begin healing the lining of the gut. We really want to go in and do that gut lining healing. And the ways that we can do that, I'm going to talk about in the next video, where I discuss the 4 R's of gut healing. But one thing that you can do, all of us can do, that is maintain a healthy microbiome. Okay, so the microbiome is really kind of cornerstone or foundational for all of this. And you can actually completely transform your microbiome within 1 to 2 weeks just by changing your diet. You can actually elicit an immediate shift in your microbiome in a couple of days by just changing your diet alone. The flip side to that is that you have to keep the diet up, because if you don't, if you go back to your previous diet or a standard Western diet or the standard American diet, your microbiome will go back to its original configuration, so to speak. So how I like to work with the microbiome is, one, begin to get on a diet that feeds the healthy bacteria, and that is a plant focused, not vegetarian, doesn't have to be vegetarian, but a plant focused diet where there's a lot of fiber in the diet, and that can feed the bacteria. So fiber is what we call a prebiotic. There's prebiotics like inulin and FOS, or fructooligosaccharides, but it's the fibers that are in plants that are the prebiotics for your probiotics, for your bacteria, your healthy bacteria. So some of your prebiotic rich foods are things like Jerusalem artichokes, dandelion greens, dandelion root, chicory root, garlic, onions, broccoli. Any kind of fiber-rich foods are going to be prebiotics for your bacteria. So they're going to feed the bacteria. So we want to eat a really healthy plant-based diet. Okay? Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to introduce probiotics, foods that have actual bacteria in them. And that would be like your fermented foods, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, which, you know, this has just exploded in the last 3 to 5 years. I've just seen an explosion in the offerings of fermented food products that are out there. So it's a really exciting time in the realm of fermented foods, because you're not just relegated to sauerkraut anymore, or sauerkraut or kimchi, which, you know, 10, 20 years ago, you know, if you want to find a fermented food, that was it. It was sauerkraut or kimchi. But now there's so many choices that are out there. Things like kombucha are okay. Small amounts of kombucha, 4 ounces of kombucha at a time. Not big bottles of it. Not a big fan of drinking huge amounts of kombucha, but just little 4 ounces at a time. You can take a bottle and make it last several days, actually, and still get the benefits of kombucha. Miso, organic miso, like miso soup, is a really great source of probiotics. You know, you can even buy like the gut shots nowadays, where companies are packaging the brine from the fermented foods. So you can even take little gut shots as well. So fermented foods are a great source. Yogurt is another good one. If you're sensitive to dairy, it's not so good for you, but there's also dairy alternatives out there like coconut yogurt and almond yogurt nowadays. So any of your fermented foods are going to bring beneficial bacteria into your gut. And what I would say to you is eat a variety of them every day at each meal. So maybe in the morning you have a little bit of yogurt, then at lunch you have a little bit of sauerkraut, or then at dinner maybe a little bit of kimchi and a small shot of kombucha. And now what you've effectively done is you've gotten a wide array of bacteria into your diet on a daily basis, and that's going to begin improving your microbiome. Okay, so these are just some really simple ways dietarily to begin to shift the health of your microbiome. Then you can get into the realm of probiotics, and this is a whole nother area to focus on. And so probiotics are supplements with beneficial bacteria in them, and there are so many probiotics on the market. When I first started in the nutrition industry about 20 some years ago, I would be amazed if I saw a probiotic that had 3 different strains of bacteria and said 3 billion bacteria. I was like, wow, 3 billion bacteria, 3 strains, that's amazing. Nowadays, there's 36 strains, 400 billion, and the question is more always better? And is more bacteria better? Wider variety better? We have probiotics for mood, probiotics for men, probiotics for women. You can go to the probiotics section of a health food store and just glaze over at the number of choices that you have nowadays, which is exciting and confusing all at the same time. You can get choice paralysis, right? So when it comes to probiotics, more isn't always better. Okay, it's not about the number of billion all the time. In fact, if you have autoimmune issues, or if you have something like SIBO as an example, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, high amounts of probiotics are actually going to be worse for you. There is research that shows that tens of billions of probiotics can actually trigger autoimmune flare-ups. So more isn't always better. It's more about balance. You really need to know what it is you're looking for. Now, the way that probiotics are normally made is that they will take a medium like dairy and culture the bacteria on that medium, and then they will spin the bacteria off of its food source and isolate it. And that's not normally how bacteria exist in the real world. They're actually communal, and they need their food source. They need to have what they're feeding on and fermenting on in order to stay alive, and in order to produce really potent, what are called postbiotic metabolites that we're finding have a greater effect in your physiology than the bacteria themselves. So I like to find probiotics that have their food source, that have the bacteria itself, as well as the metabolites of the bacteria. And so, and that's also why eating fermented food is so beneficial as well. But if you can eat a little bit of fermented food, take a good probiotic. One thing you can do nowadays is you can actually get your microbiome tested by companies like Viome, and they will test your microbiome and tell you what the collection of bacteria are that you have in your gut, and tell you what foods you should eat and what foods you shouldn't eat, and help you balance your microbiome that way. And I think that is revolutionary, and I think it's there's a lot of promise ahead in that realm of research. So boy, that was a lot of information. So we've got the brain-gut connection, we've got it's known as the brain-gut axis. We know that we have bidirectional communication via the gut and the brain, via the vagus nerve. We know that poor gut function can lead to leaky gut. Leaky gut can lead to autoimmunity, and that the microbiome is basically one of the most important factors of your overall health right now. And interestingly enough, your microbiome is so specific to you, it is as accurate of an identifier of you as your thumbprint. It is yours and yours alone, and you can take care of it by feeding it lots of good fibrous plant food, lots of good fermented food products, and taking a really good probiotic. Lots of information to take in there. In the next video, we're going to go into the 4 R's of gut healing, and this is how you can address leaky gut. This is how you can address any kind of gut inflammation and any kind of issues stemming from an unhealthy gut lining. Okay, so we're going to go into the 4 R's of gut healing, and kind of begin to show you how you can pull this all together and create an overall healthy digestive tract, healthy digestion, and optimized health. If you want to learn more about what I have to offer or how to work with me, go to the link below at judahvital.com. Leave me any questions you have or any comments, and I thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a nourishing day.